when Tom Hanks walked back into a tiny movie theater in Asheville, North Carolina, on a rainy Thursday night in October. The 81-year-old woman threading film in the projection booth upstairs had no idea that her life was about to change. But what Tom was about to discover that night, in her lobby, in her kitchen, in the back bedroom, where her brother slept under a hand-stitched quilt, would teach him something he thought he had already learned a long time ago. It was October 17, 2024. What Tom Hanks did over the next 9 days. The 7 words he said to Ruth Marlock at her kitchen table that made her cry harder than she had cried since her husband's funeral. The secret her late husband Bertram had been keeping from her for 8 years. In the moment, a 79-year-old man with dementia read something out loud that made 27 grown adults weep in the lobby of a 1928 movie theater. This is one of the most quietly powerful stories you will ever hear. But the reason this story matters, the reason we are telling it tonight, is not because Tom Hanks wrote a check. It is because of what he saw when he walked into that lobby, and what he saw is something every single one of us walks past in our own towns every single day. Stay until the end. Because the final word Albert Marlock ever spoke 2 days before he died is not what you think it will be. Tom Hanks pulled into the parking lot of the Belmont Theater at 6:47 in the evening. He sat in the rental car for a moment watching the rain. "You sure about this?" his driver asked. Tom nodded. Sometimes you have to go back to the place that made you to figure out what you owe." He stepped out of the car, his knees stiff from the flight. At 68, he wasn't the kid who used to walk these streets anymore. He pulled his Ace Hardware cap down lower and tugged the collar of his denim jacket up against the cold. The Belmont sat on the corner of Patton Avenue and Cog Street. He climbed the 4 marble steps under the marquee and pulled open the brass door. The smell hit him as soon as he stepped inside. That mix of popcorn oil and old velvet and brass polish that had been the same in this lobby since 1968. And just like that, Tom Hanks was 11 years old again. It was the summer of 1968. His father, Amos Hanks, had taken him on a road trip across the South in a brown station wagon with a torn vinyl seat. They had sat in the 3rd row from the back of Theater 1. Tom, 11 years old, had laughed so hard at something. Wiro Mostel said that he had choked on a kernel of popcorn. A complete stranger sitting behind them had reached over and patted him on the shoulder until he stopped coughing. His father had laughed all the way back to the motel. He had said one thing Tom never forgot, "Tommy, look at that man behind us. You know what he did just now? He saw you. He didn't know you. He didn't owe you anything. But he saw a kid who needed help, and he stopped what he was doing." Most people in this world look right through other people. The good ones look at them. That is the whole secret, Tommy. That is the whole thing. Amos Hanks died in January of 2007, but Tom carried that one sentence with him for the next 56 years. That is the whole secret. Look at people. He walked along the wall of the Belmont lobby looking at the old posters. He noticed 3 things most people would have missed. An old man in a worn coat sleeping upright on the bench by the radiator, his hands folded over his chest. A heavy-set woman in a Belmont t-shirt mopping near the concession stand. 24 years old maybe, with tired eyes. A college student in a plaid scarf reading a paperback copy of East of Eden in the corner. Tom nodded at each of them as he passed. The old man did not see him. The woman with the mop glanced up and gave him a small smile. The college student did not look up. That was fine. They didn't have to. The nodding was not for them. It was for Tom. He was so lost in the act of looking that he almost didn't notice the old woman coming down the narrow staircase from the projection booth. She moved slowly, one hand on the railing, the other holding a metal film canister. Her hair was white and pinned back with 2 bobby pins. She wore a gray cardigan and a small silver pin shaped like a film reel on her collar. "Excuse me," Tom said quietly. The woman looked up, squinting through her bifocals. "Box office is closed for the 7 o'clock. I'm not here for a ticket. I used to come here as a kid at, say, how long ago? About 56 years, she laughed quietly. "That's going back some. I've been in that booth since 72. Tom stared at her, the wide forehead, the kind eyes. "Ruth, is that you, Ruth Marlock?" Her hand went to her chest. "Do I know you, sir? It's Tom Hanks." Her eyes widened. She set the film canister down on the step. "My goodness, Mr. Hanks in my lobby, I'll be." Tom climbed up to where she stood and gave her a careful hug. She felt small in his arms. "I cannot believe you are still working here, Ruth. How long has it been?" 52 years next March. How old are you now? 81 last May. Tom paused for a moment. Stop and think about that. 81 years old, climbing those narrow wooden stairs every Thursday night to thread a film for 30 strangers who would never know her name. Most of us cannot imagine doing one job for 52 years. Most of us cannot imagine being 81 and still walking up 4 flights of stairs in the dark. But Ruth Marlock could, and she had. "And you're still climbing those stairs every night?" Ruth shrugged. "What else am I going to do, dear? The show doesn't run itself. My husband Bertram, he did this job before me. He passed in 2019. Tom went quiet for a moment. "I'm so sorry. He was a good man. We ran this booth together for 47 years. Now I run it by myself." She picked up the canister. Tom reached for it. "Let me get this. You don't have to do that. I want to." She let go. He followed her up the stairs into the projection booth. The Belmont still ran 35mm prints on a projector that had been there since 1958. He sat on a folding chair while she finished threading the film. He watched her hands moving with the kind of muscle memory that comes from doing the same thing 50,000 times. "Ruth, how much do they pay you to do this?" Ruth's hands paused. Then she kept working. "The Belmont pays me a small amount. I do not need much. I do not need much." Was not an answer. "Ruth, your house. How is your house?" Ruth was very still. "My house, dear, is just fine. You said in your letter that the new manager wanted to phase out the 35mm prints." Ruth's hand went still on the film. She turned around slowly. "You read it? I read it 3 times. Sitting on the back porch of my house in California. I have it with me right now." He reached into the inside pocket of his denim jacket and pulled out the folded yellow pages. She pressed her hand against her mouth and her eyes filled up. "Dear God, I just wrote it because I thought you should know. I never thought you would come. Ruth, can I drive you home tonight after the show? I would like to meet your brother." "You do not have to do that, Mr. Hanks." "Tom, you do not have to. I want to." She nodded. Tom walked out into the cold October rain and crossed Patton Avenue to a coffee shop called Trade and Lore. He sat at a window table. He took out his phone. The woman who picked up on the 3rd ring was Cassandra Levering. She had been his lawyer for 19 years. "Cassie, I am in Asheville. I need you to drive up tonight." "What is going on, Tom?" He looked out the window at the rain. He thought about what to say. He thought about Amos Hanks in 1968. Telling a small boy about the man in the brown suit. "Cassie, I walked into the Belmont tonight. There is an 81-year-old woman in the projection booth. She has been threading film in that theater for 52 years. She heats her house to 65 degrees in October because she cannot afford 68. She has a brother in the back bedroom with dementia. She has not bought a new pair of shoes since 2016. Tom, Cassie, I am not doing this because she ever did anything for me. She didn't. She just did her job. She did it well. She did it without complaining. The reason I am doing this is because for 52 years, an entire town has been walking through her lobby, and not one single person has looked up and seen her. I walked in tonight, and I saw her, and I am not going to leave until she has been seen." There was a long silence on the line. "Tell me what you need." "I need a trust set up by Monday. I need a contractor on her porch by tomorrow morning. I need every medical bill she owes pulled and paid, and I need you to bring your husband. We are going to be here for 9 days. I am on my way." Now stop the story for a moment, because what Tom just said on that phone is the part that matters. He did not say she was kind to me, so I will be kind to her. He did not say she earned it. He said something different. He said an entire town has been walking through her lobby, and not one person has looked up. He said, "I am not going to leave until she has been seen." That is not generosity. That is something deeper. That is what Amos Hanks taught his son in a brown station wagon in 1968. The smallest people in a room are usually carrying the heaviest things. You do not have to know them. You do not have to love them. You only have to look at them. That is the whole secret. That is the whole thing. At 9:30, Tom drove Ruth home. She lived in a small bungalow on Sycamore Street 4 miles from the theater. Green moss was growing on the wooden steps. The railing wobbled under her hand. A board was missing from the porch floor. Inside, the wallpaper in the front hall was peeling. The carpet on the stairs was worn down to the backing. The kitchen smelled like cottage cheese, and the heat was set at 65 degrees. The heat, she said. It cost more in October than it used to. Tom held his teacup in both hands. Ruth, how much money would it take for you to be able to stop working and live the rest of your life without worrying? Ruth set her teacup down so carefully it did not make a sound on the saucer. That is a strange question, dear. It is a real one. She folded her hands. Bertram and I, we always thought we would have a little put away by now. The Belmont was good to us. But Bertram's last year, the cancer, it ate through everything. I had to take a second mortgage on this house to cover the hospice. Then Albert had his stroke. He had been living in a rented room in Memphis. I brought him home. What is the second mortgage? $41,000 and the medical bills. Ruth almost laughed. Honey, I do not even open those envelopes anymore. I put them in a shoebox in the hall closet. Can I see the shoebox? She walked into the hall and came back with a Reebok shoebox. The lid was held on with a rubber band. Tom took the lid off. The shoebox was full of envelopes, some white, some pink, some stamped final order. He counted as he went. He stopped at $63,400. There were still envelopes left. He looked up at Ruth. Bertram used to say something to me, she said quietly. He would say it on the bad nights, when the heat bill came in higher than we thought, when the projector broke down, when the roof needed patching. He would say, Ruth, the world does not owe us anything, but we owe each other everything we can give. She looked down at her hands. I have tried to live by that. $63,000 worth of medical bills in the shoebox, and I am still trying to live by that. Tom did not say anything for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the back of the house. Ruth led him. She opened a door softly. Albert, sweetheart, there is somebody here I want you to meet. Albert Marlock was 79 years old. He sat up in the bed in the converted sewing room, wearing blue cotton pajamas. His eyes focused on Tom for a moment, the way a clear thing surfaces in deep water. You are tall, I am, yes. Our father was tall, 6'2". He worked at the cotton mill in Gastonia. He used to hold me up so I could touch the ceiling. He used to say, Albert, the ceiling is the lowest part of the sky. Albert smiled. He used to say something else too. He used to say, a man is not the work he does. A man is the people he was kind to. Albert looked at Ruth. He looked back at Tom. My sister has been kind to many people. Many, many people. Ruth pulled the quilt up over his shoulders. She tucked it under his chin, the way she had probably tucked her brother in 50,000 times, when they were children together in a house in Greensboro a long time ago. The next morning at 6 a.m., Tom stood on a porch on Linden Street holding 2 cups of coffee. Garrison Wealthy opened the door in a flannel robe and stared. I knew you would come. I knew it had to be you. Tom paused. What do you mean you knew? Garrison looked at him for a long moment. Tom, I have known for 19 years. Bertram told me in 2005. He made me promise not to tell Ruth. He said you wanted it that way. Tom set the coffees down on the porch railing. Bertram told you what? He told me you were the one paying for the projector repairs. He told me you bought the building in 2016. He told me you were the one keeping the Belmont alive. He said you had asked him to never tell Ruth because you wanted her to believe the theater was loved by the universe, not by one man. Bertram kept that secret for 14 years. The night he died, he told me one more time. He said, Garrison, if anything ever happens, if Ruth ever needs him, Tom Hanks will come. You make sure she lets him in. Tom did not say anything for a long time. She does not know. She has never known. Not a single day. By 9 a.m., Cassandra Levering and her husband Brian were in Asheville. By 10 a.m., the contractor was on the Sycamore Street porch. By 11 a.m., Ruth and Albert were in a car heading to a cabin in Black Mountain. But before Ruth left, Tom sat down at her kitchen table one more time. He told her everything. He told her about the developer in 2016. He told her about the Belmont Heritage Trust. He told her about the brass handles and the projector and the property taxes for 8 years. He told her that Bertram had known and that Bertram had kept the secret because Tom had asked him to. Ruth closed her eyes. A long tear ran down the side of her nose. He used to say to me, Ruth, somebody up there is watching for the Belmont. 8 years he said it. She opened her eyes. It was you. It was a lot of people, Ruth. But yes, she stood up. She walked across the room. She put both her hands on either side of Tom's face. Her palms were cold from the teacup. You good man, you good man. Ruth, I am not a good man because of what I did for the theater. I am a good man because, once when I was 11 years old, my father turned around in a brown station wagon and told me to look at the people in the rooms I walk into. That is the only thing I have ever done that matters. I looked at you. That is it. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, Tom met Garrison at the Belmont and gave him the keys. He told him to rehire everyone Crestview had fired. Lurlen Apgar, Demetra Frawley, Devin Olafson. But here is the thing about a project like this. There is always a moment somewhere in the middle where everything almost falls apart. Tom's came on Tuesday morning at 8:14 a.m. His phone rang. It was Patrice the nurse calling from Black Mountain. Mr. Hanks, Albert had a bad night. He woke up at 2 a.m. He did not know where he was. He kept asking for our father. Ruth was up with him for 4 hours. She is exhausted. I think she is about to ask me to drive them back. Tom closed his eyes. The bathroom in the Sycamore Street house was down to bare studs. Put Ruth on a pause. Tom, Ruth, listen to me. Can you do 5 more days? Tom, he keeps asking for our father. He thinks our father is alive. Tom thought for a long moment. Ruth, does Albert remember the song your father used to sing him? He does. He remembers that one. Sing it to him. Sing it to him every time he asks. Will you do that? There was a long silence. Yes, I will do that. That night, in a cabin in Black Mountain, an 81-year-old woman sang an old hymn to her 79-year-old brother. She sang it 3 times before he fell asleep. By Wednesday afternoon, the second mortgage was paid off in full. The medical debt was paid off in full. By Thursday, the bathroom was finished with grab bars and a roll-in shower and a heated floor. The bedroom had a queen-size adjustable bed, so Ruth could sleep next to her brother. The kitchen had lower counters and a refrigerator with the door hung on the left because Ruth was left-handed. By Friday morning, Rita Wilson arrived from California with 2 suitcases. She walked through the finished house with Tom, her hand on his arm. Tommy, this is where she is going to sit every morning. I know. For the rest of her life that afternoon, Tom drove Rita to Black Mountain. Ruth was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, watching Albert feed crackers to a chipmunk. Rita walked up the porch steps and sat down in the chair next to Ruth. She did not say hello. She reached over and took Ruth's hand. Ruth, my husband has been telling me about you and Bertram for 30 years. The projectionist in Asheville, who threaded film the way her husband had taught her. Ruth's eyes filled. He told you about me. He told everybody about you, Ruth. He just never told you he was telling them. On Friday night, the 25th, the lobby of the Belmont filled up. 27 people came in through the rain. Tom stood at the back, friends. Day after tomorrow, Ruth and Albert come home. Before we plan the rest of it, I want to hear from anyone in this room who has a story about Ruth. Lurlen Apgar raised her hand. In 2014, my husband Edmund had a heart attack at the concession stand. Ruth came down from the booth. She did CPR on him on the lobby floor for 9 minutes. She kept him alive until the ambulance got there. Edmund is sitting in our living room right now watching the Carolina game. Because of Ruth Marlock, Demetra Frawley wiped her eyes. When my daughter Magdalena was born premature, I could not afford to take time off. Ruth covered my shifts for 3 months. She did her own job in mine. She gave me the extra pay and cash in envelopes in my mailbox. She thought I did not know it was her. Garrison Welty stepped forward. In 2019, when Bertram was dying, the hospice said he had 3 weeks. I came over one Sunday. Ruth was sitting next to his bed, reading him the screenplay of It's a Wonderful Life. She had typed it out herself, page by page. She told me she could not show him the film anymore because he could not see the screen, but he could still hear. So she read it to him, the whole screenplay, 3 times, from the first page to the last. Tom looked down at the brass-trimmed counter of the ticket window for a long moment. Now, stop and think about that for a second. A woman with no money typing out a film screenplay by hand, page by page on her husband's typewriter, so she could read it to him while he was dying. 3 times. That is not the act of a person who needs to be noticed. That is the act of a person who lives by the rule. Bertram quoted to her on the bad nights, "We owe each other everything we can give." Ruth Marlock has been living by that rule for 52 years. The towns she lived in walked past her. The audiences she served walked past her. We walked past her, all of us, every single day in our own towns, in our own lobbies. The Ruth Marlocks in our lives are always there. We just have to look up. When Tom looked up, his eyes were wet. That is why we are doing this. Devin Olofsson opened the wooden box. Inside was a cream-colored ticket, 80 mit 2. Ruth and Marlock. Pearl's seating in perpetuity. On Sunday at 2, the Marley is going to say, "Welcome home, Ruth. Welcome home." Albert, by Monday morning, the Belmont will become a community-owned theater, endowed for the next 100 years. Garrison will be the manager. Ruth will be the artistic director for as long as she wants to be. On Sunday the 27th at 1:58 p.m., a car turned on to Patton Avenue. Inside the car, Ruth Marlock sat in the back seat with Albert beside her. Patrice was in the front. The car slowed in front of the Belmont. Ruth looked up through the window. The marquee was lit. All 48 bulbs, 42 of them original. And the marquee read, "Welcome home. Ruth, welcome home, Albert." Sponsored in perpetuity by the Friends of the Belmont. 1928. Ruth pressed her hand against the window. She did not say anything for a long time. "Patrice, could you stop the car?" The front door of the Belmont opened. Tom Hanks stepped out under the marquee. Behind him, Rita Wilson. Behind Rita, Garrison Welty. Behind Garrison, 27 people stood in the lobby in a quiet half-circle. Albert was looking up at the marquee. His mouth was slightly open. "Ruthie, Ruthie, that says my name." Ruth could not answer at first. She put her hand over her mouth. "That says Albert. ALB, that is my name?" "Yes, sweetheart." Albert kept reading. His eyes moved back to the start. "It says Ruth. Ruthie, it says Ruth and Albert." His eyes filled. He turned to look at his sister. "Ruthie, is that for me? Is that for me, Ruthie?" She nodded. She could not speak. "Father would be so happy. Do you remember what he used to say?" "I remember, sweetheart. The ceiling is the lowest part of the sky." Ruth closed her eyes. In the lobby, Lurleen Apgar was holding her husband Edmund's hand. Edmund was crying without making any sound. Demetra Frawley had her arm around her daughter Magdalena, who was now 26 and standing in a theater. She had been to 100 times as a child, because her mother had worked there, because a woman named Ruth had once covered her mother's shifts for 3 months without taking the pay. Garrison Welty stood with the ring of 12 keys, Patrice the nurse, who had been a nurse for 31 years and thought she had seen the limit of what a human face could do. Tom walked across the wet sidewalk and opened the back door of the car all the way. "Albert, you both have reserved seats for the 4 o'clock. I am going to walk you in." Tom helped Albert out first. Albert walked slowly across the wet sidewalk, looking up at the marquee the whole way, his lips moving silently as he read his own name. Rita took Ruth's other arm. They walked up the 4 marble steps. Through the brass doors Tom had paid to have recast in 2017. Into the lobby the smell hit her, old velvet brass polish. Some things never changed. The 27 people did not cheer. They did not clap. They stood in their half-circle, and they waited. Tom led Ruth and Albert into Theater 1. On the screen the title card of Far From Heaven was waiting. Ruth sat in the 3rd row from the back. Albert sat next to her. The projector hummed to life, 35 millimeter. Some moments belonged to the people who lived them. Ruth Marlock kept threading the 4 o'clock reel for the next 18 months. She trained the young projectionist Tom hired, a 35-year-old man named Asher Brindle from Knoxville. She walked Albert to the bird feeder every morning. She slept in the queen-size bed next to her brother. She ate oatmeal with him in the mornings. Albert Marlock died peacefully in his sleep on April 14, 2026, with his sister holding his hand. The last thing he said was 3 words. He said, "Tell Tom thank you," and then he closed his eyes. But there is one more thing this story has not told you. The most important thing Tom Hanks did for Ruth Marlock was not the trust fund. It was not the renovated house. It was something Ruth would not discover until the morning of April 16, 2026. 2 days after Albert died, the funeral director in Asheville called her at 8:30 in the morning. "Mrs. Marlock, I am calling about the plot." "What plot?" "The plot in Greensboro, ma'am, next to your husband. The one Mr. Hanks purchased in October of 2024. For your brother." Ruth sat down in her kitchen chair. In October of 2024, while the contractors were rebuilding her bathroom, Tom Hanks had quietly bought a single burial plot in a cemetery in Greensboro. Next to Bertram Marlock, he had paid for it in cash. He had told the funeral director only one thing: if she ever needs to bury her brother, she should not have to think about the money. And he should not be far from his sister's husband. They are family. They should be together. Ruth held the phone against her ear for a long moment. He thought of everything. He thought of everything. Albert Marlock was buried next to Bertram Marlock on April 18, 2026, in a small cemetery of Highway 70 in Greensboro, 6 miles from the cotton mill where their father had once worked. Tom Hanks flew out for the service. He did not speak. He did not need to. When it was over, Ruth walked back to where he was standing. She did not say thank you. She had stopped saying thank you to Tom Hanks a long time ago. She took his hand the way she had held it on her porch on a rainy Thursday night in October. Here is what this story is about. It is not about a famous man who wrote a check. It is not about a renovated house. It is about a sentence Amos Hanks said to his 11-year-old son in a brown station wagon in 1968. Most people in this world look right through other people. The good ones look at them. That is the whole secret. That is the whole thing right now. Tonight, in your own town, there is a Ruth Marlock. There is someone climbing stairs they should not have to climb. Someone heating their house to 65 degrees because they cannot afford 68. Someone covering shifts for a younger woman with a premature baby and not taking the pay. Someone reading the screenplay of a movie to a dying husband because he can no longer see the screen. You will pass that person tomorrow. They will smile at you. They will not tell you what they are carrying. They do not believe they deserve to be noticed. The question is not whether they exist. They do. The question is whether you will look up. Tom Hanks did not look up because he was rich. He looked up because his father taught him to, in a brown station wagon in 1968 on a road trip across the South. You do not need millions of dollars to apply that lesson. You only need to look at the person mopping the floor of the lobby you walk through tomorrow morning, the person in the toll booth, the person ringing up your groceries, the person sweeping the parking lot, the neighbor on the corner who has not had a visitor in 8 months, the teacher who stayed late 3 nights this week to help a kid who could not afford a tutor. Look at them. Say good morning. Use their name if it is on their tag. Ask one question that is not about the transaction. The smallest people in a room are usually carrying the heaviest things. That is the lesson. That is the whole secret. That is the whole thing. Ruth Marlock once said something to a reporter who asked her, after the story finally got out, what she had done to deserve any of it. She thought for a long moment. Then she said, "I did not deserve any of it. None of us deserve any of it. We are only ever owed what each other is willing to give us." The miracle of Tom Hanks is not that he had money. The miracle is that he had eyes. Most of you do too. You just have not been taught how to use them. If this story moved you tonight, please take a moment to like this video and to subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the smallest people in the room are usually carrying the heaviest things. Tomorrow morning, look up at one person you would normally walk past. Just one. Say their name. Ask one question. That is how kindness travels. One person, one moment, one look up at a time. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. We have people joining us from all over the world, and we love seeing your cities, your towns, your hometowns. Let us know you were here. And if you believe the world needs more people who look up, subscribe to this channel and bring someone else along with you. Share this video with one person today. Just one, because that is exactly how this lesson gets passed on. Not by watching a video, by doing this small thing tomorrow.